everyone, we're Albert Labs, and our mission is to ensure accelerated access to safe and effective psychedelic-assisted therapy for patients with urgent and unmet needs. So, of course, Albert Labs, Albert Hofmann, the pioneer who discovered LSD and then later synthesized psilocin from psilocybin. He was a hugely renowned academist, and he was notable for his work in psychedelics, and we want to pay homage to him. And this is Albert Labs, and I'm going to introduce you to Chand Jagpal, our Chief Operations Officer, and later you'll hear from Malcolm Barratt-Johnson, who is our Chief Medical Officer.
Fantastic. Thank you, Barney. So I'm also a director of Albert Labs, and I just want to really quickly introduce Albert Labs. Our website is albertlabs.com. There's an Invest Now button to the top right-hand side. And you can go there and click on it and find all sorts of information and get a corporate update there as well. So really quickly, I want to move into why Albert Labs is different. We're different than a lot of other psychedelic deals because we're asset light. We're what we call a blue ocean strategy, and we're targeting fast results. And so when I talk about asset light, we're not a company that's investing in a lot of clinics or real estate. We're not a company that's investing into novel molecules. That could be hundreds of millions. We do have a lab in Burnaby where we can import, export, sell. We're going to target some R&D for psilocybin cultivation, extraction, and formulation technologies. But the bulk of our capital expenditure is going to be on actually setting up the real-world evidence team, getting in a situation where we can get to patients quickly that require treatment, that have an unmet medical need, and then move forward with revenues and create shareholder value. So as a blue ocean strategy, our niche mental health indication has to do with cancer-related anxiety. And this cancer-related anxiety, of course, is going to be within the oncology centers in the UK. And these oncology centers already have multidisciplinary teams. They have patient pools, clinicians, and experts. And so we're adding our psilocybin-based assisted therapy to this team. And what we really want to do is get to these patients fast. These patients, they really need this therapy. And we know that psilocybin is a great help in the quality of life to patients that are suffering from cancer-related anxiety. And then step two would be to get those therapies approved and move quickly into revenue generation. So really quickly, as a value proposition, what is Albert Labs? Well, we're going to be a first mover. We're going to be the first psychedelics company to leverage real-world evidence studies to deliver the therapies to patients with unmet medical needs. We're also going to have an IP strategy. We're going to run these trials. So the real-world evidence trials, we are collecting data, and this data will be published. It'll be published, the results will be published so that we can then turn around and use those publications to market more clinicians and patients on how well the therapy works. And thirdly, we're a scalable and portable model. So although we're starting with cancer-related anxiety, we can quickly move into other niche mental health indications. And beyond that, we can move this same strategy across Europe. So we can access other oncology centers, for instance, through the Scandinavian countries, down throughout Germany, and throughout the rest of Europe. So in summary, I just want to mention, I want to summarize that our commercialization model is based on an asset-light strategy. It's based on the real-world evidence team that we've put together. We have experts in market access, drug development, regulatory, UK regulatory compliance issues. And what we're really going to do is spend the money to make sure that real-world evidence team can get access to those patients and to those revenues. And what I'll do is I'll hand it over to Malcolm, and Malcolm can do a deep dive into real-world evidence and what it's all about.
Chand, thank you very much. Hello, good evening, everybody. Evening in the UK over here, anyway. I'm Malcolm Barratt-Jonhson. I'm the CMO of the company. And my background is I'm a medical doctor, and I trained in London. I then went and became an anaesthetist, and then joined the MHRA, the regulatory body in the UK. And my background is very much regulatory based. And then I went into the European Commission. I joined with the Innovative Medicines Initiative, and then I set up a series of companies working on the regulatory space and in, as Chand said, in the market access side and the medical affairs side. So I'm very much into the medical side of cancer and everything we're dealing with here. When you're looking at a normal clinical trial, a randomized clinical trial, it's a very expensive process. It costs about $250 million if you're lucky, and it takes many years, 3 to 5 years, again, if you're very lucky. And you still don't really get out at the other end the results you really want. It's a bit of a lottery. What's happened recently is we've developed a series of models across the regulatory space and into market access, which allow us to actually look at the real world data. Real world evidence as a concept has been around quite a long time, but only recently have we really been able to capitalize on that and use it correctly. Now on this slide, you can see basically this wheel on the right hand side here. Now what we're going to be using is, with real world evidence, you can actually target patients quicker, you can get the data in quicker. And why do we need that? Because nowadays, innovation, medicines have advanced so far, is that it's very complex to actually get a product in, take it to market at any time frame, at any cost, which is a reasonable one. Not only that, the patients are waiting around. And as Chand said earlier, this is a very interesting space, but a very, very vital space. Cancer patients, and especially at this point in time when we got COVID-19, and we got a lot of cancer patients suffering very badly, need to have access to these medicines quickly. Now, to do that in a clinical trial setting, an RCT takes time and effort. With this, we can get, as I said, the products in quickly, and we can work with people who know what they're doing on the oncology space. We're going to be using a model which, as Chand said, we're going to go into the major centres in the UK, like the Marsden, and we're going to be working with oncology specialists and cancer specialists, actually giving these medicines to them and seeing results really quickly. That way, as Chand said, we aren't using assets ourselves, we're using the assets of the NHS and innovators and investigators who already know how to treat patients. But by giving them another tool with the psychedelics, we can actually see the results much quicker. Barney, next slide, please. On here, we've got the timeline of it. So what we've started already. At the end of 2020, we formed the company. We've got advisory boards on board now. And what we're doing at the moment, we're actually putting the protocols together to go into these centres. Now, when we've done that, we can actually expand that centre structure up to 10 centres in the UK. And our hope is, within a very short space of time, expand that across Europe. Into June, we can then start our partnerships properly and then expand that out, distributing psilocybin. And we're hoping by the end of the year, we can get interim analyses. Now, that's an amazing thing to do, because with the world evidence, we can do something that the RCTs can't do. We can get interim analyses, and we're hoping to get real publications out, if not by the end of this year, by the very beginning of 2022. To do that is quite an achievement. And what we can also then do is we can tie this information in with the regulatory authorities and with new processes now present in Britain, because of the Brexit, allows the regulators to go much more independent than they've ever had before. And they will be working with us in actually co-developing these drugs and working with us to get these drugs into patients officially and license them. So Chand, I'll hand it back to you now.
Thank you very much, Malcolm. So we are listing on the CSE very soon, the next couple months. We're raising $4 million as our target. The valuation is really good. It's 12.5. It's less than 12 million actually dollars as a corporate a company valuation. And like I said before, you can go to our website, you can register there, and there's even a sub-agreement to see if you qualify for our pre-IPO raise. I guess I can hand it back to you, Barney, now, or for questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Patrick was going to jump in for the questions. If not, well, there he comes.
Hello, everybody. Questions coming in hot. So, and just a note to the audience, if you do have any questions, feel free to pop them in the Q&A bar there. But in the meantime, I'm just going to kind of run off a couple questions here that we had ahead of time. So, as the UK is now a single state outside the European Union, does this affect Albert Labs? If so, how?
I'll take that one, actually, Patrick. Thank you. It does, in a good way. As I said, Brexit has occurred very recently, and I'm no big fan of Brexit. I'm married to an Italian, and I like Europe enormously. But what it has allowed is allowed the UK to actually go independent on the regulatory side. And what does that mean? It allows actually the regulators to develop new ways of developing medicines. Now, literally in the last few days, in the last few weeks, we've had a new process being put in place, which will allow us to work with the regulators officially to develop a clinical development plan with them all the way to market access. It's something that the UK can do that pretty well no other country can do. We've seen the beginnings of that because, as you can see probably with the vaccines, we've had the commotions recently between the UK and Europe, which was on the BBC this morning. And we are actually now very adept at actually allowing the regulators to come in and help companies in the early stages of these things. Also, what we've got is a new process between the FDA and the MHRA, the regulatory body in the UK, which allows us to work with the FDA officially, and indeed other countries like Australia and Singapore. So once we get regulatory approval, once we get regulatory help in the UK, working with the UK government, then that will allow us a much freer rein into every other market in the world. And the MHRA is a very, very good regulator. And why is it doing it? It's doing it because the UK wants to show it can actually lead the field in innovative medicines. And we are very much hoping they want to lead the field in psychedelics as well. And we want to show that actually UK research and clinical trial centres are some of the best in the world, if not the best. And so it's going to be a very, very interesting thing. But I think the UK is the place to be at the moment.
Beautiful. And a question about your R&D lab. How do you, can you touch on it and how you intend to supply your real world evidence studies? Like how are those going to come out?
Sure. So I'll go through the supply chain real quick. So our lab in Burnaby, British Columbia, close to Vancouver here, is set up as a place for business where we can import, export, hold psilocybin and other psychedelics. But really what it's about is getting a psilocybin-based medicine. So using naturally sourced psilocybin as an API and getting that to the formulation and distribution centers in the UK. And they already exist. We've already got relationships with them. Lexon Pharmaceuticals will then take that formulation and they'll distribute it to each of the pharmacies and the oncology centers and then to the named patients. So it's about the supply chain and ensuring that we have that and we have a source of that supply chain all the way back to North America. Beautiful.
And then speaking of supply chain, can you go into a bit more detail about the reimbursement systems in the UK and how that can generate revenue?
Yeah, sure, Patrick. What we've got in the UK is a fairly complex system by which the regulator, we've got sort of two bodies in the UK. One's called NICE, which is the market access program, and the other one is the Scottish Medicines Consortium. So we're divided into two, sort of Scotland and England. We've got that sort of rivalry still going. And the NICE looks very much at areas of quality of life. They have QALYs, the quality of life measures, and these are things like agitation in this sort of area. They're like how patients feel, what their quality of life is in certain specific parameters. And what they do, they put that against a actual measure and a cost. Now, they very much work in the space where they look at the data and they work, or they have worked very independently up to this point. They're now joining up with the MHRA, the regulators, and they're going to be looking at the way that goes forward. Now, once you've got the market access teams on board, and we're very hopeful we can do through this new process the UK government's put in place, that allows us access to the NHS. Once the market access teams are on board, basically the whole of the NHS system is open to you in the space in which we're working, which will be oncology patients. In the UK, we've got about 1.2 million oncology patients who would need this medicine and who have use of this medicine. And that's amazing. So once in, that's what we've got access to. And it's not just a matter of accessing patients and oncology patients who need it. It's a matter of once we're there, it could be used in a variety of other ways, and it could be used in a variety of other studies. What we have is investigator-initiated studies where people start using it because they're already used to using it. So by that, it rolls over and over and over. And it's a very good way of introducing doctors and clinicians to what the medicine can do. So we're very much hoping that the market access will be a huge plus to us. And again, as we're very well developed in the UK in this space, again, we really do think that's the place to be. And we think this can be a big advantage to then get it across into the market access programs across Europe as well.
So speaking of kind of market access and, you know, starting somewhere, in terms of, you know, your first development, why did you choose cancer-related anxiety as your first symptom to approach?
Chand, do you want to say that?
Yeah, I'll take this one. So cancer and mental health are two national agenda items for the UK. And it's very important to come up with solutions for both these. And cancer-related anxiety is an unmet medical need. So it's important to understand that, you know, out of the 3 million cancer patients in the UK, 1.2 million suffer from some sort of distress and anxiety. And out of those, half of those patients, more than 500,000 patients, don't have any means to deal with it. And that's why cancer-related anxiety would be our first choice. It is a huge market, and it's a huge, for us, it's a huge way to help someone's quality of life that's going through such suffering right now.
It's also actually, it's a completely, as you said, Chand, it's a completely unmet need. You know, I did oncology for a number of years as a clinician, and oncology patients are a very undemanding group as such. They suffer terribly. And you see them going through a whole mass of stuff. And this is something which just hasn't got any other medicine. It's got no other compound which is being used in it. In some parts, because clinicians are too scared to. They feel it may affect the immunotherapy, it may affect the way that another medicine works. But we know with psilocybin that we really can get to a point where we can get up to 4 times that effect of an antidepressant in some cases. And that's an amazing thing to have. You don't see that sort of thing with any other drug that early on in treatment. And we see a continuation of the effect over a long time. So it really will make an effect on these patients, almost above any other patient group we could think of.
Beautiful. A question from somebody in the audience here, Jay Chu, is wondering, are you planning to develop your own develop and patent your own psychedelic at all?
Want to touch on that, Malcolm? No specific patents. We're basing our IP around novel formulations and our brand name. So we would love to entertain other companies that have novel molecules and maybe try to integrate them into our studies. But as far as a path that we're going to go down, that's not something that we tend to spend money on.
Having said that, though, I suppose, Chand, what we're doing as well, though, we're looking for a real-world evidence which goes into a licensed drug.
Yeah.
When we get the license for that drug, then that formulation, as you said, Chand, will basically be specific to us. We will have access to that, and that will be ours, like any other medicine in the world. So you're right, not patent, but we will have access to it solely. So that would be a very interesting area to work.
So, and then just back to the question I had here. So one thing about your data, will you be publishing it publicly? Is there, you know, certain data sets that you'll keep private, certain that you'll put out there, or how is the data being treated?
The data will be specific to the company. So that's sort of our IP as well. So we will have access to that, and that will be the company's. The data will be released, well, it'll be released to the regulators, but it will be released in posters, it would be released in publications like any other medicine would be in terms of development. So it would be a very phased development of the data over a period of time through conferences, through publications, and into learned journals. What we're doing is effectively using psilocybin like any other medicine to develop a real-world evidence base, as you would have done in the old days with a randomized controlled trial, but doing it much quicker.
Fantastic. In the Q&A bar here, I've got a question from a previous panelist, Mr. Peter. What issues are you running into with respect to standardization and purity profiles with naturally sourced psilocybin?
That's something we need to develop. We need to work on that, but definitely you have to have consistent product. And, that's one of the keys. And there's critical thresholds that we have to meet throughout the production. And we need to make sure that it's all audited properly by a GACP auditor. So there's a lot to that process, but it's something that we have the expertise to take care of.
Fantastic. Just sort of nearing towards the end of the section here, I want to leave with sort of a question past moving towards future. What barriers have you identified, with scaling Albert Labs, and what kind of patient scale up do you envision for the RWE route?
Patrick, what we're doing, so we're going to go into 10 centres in this coming year in the UK, and we're looking to have 1,000 patients or so in that time frame. As I said, what we've got is 1.2 million patients in the UK alone would be eligible for this sort of medicine. I think we have to be realistic. So we're looking towards the end of this year. We get those 10 centres on board. My guess is when we show that the drug works and the psychedelics work in this space, we're going to have a lot more patients in 2022. I think 2022 is going to be ridiculously busy. We're going to then expand out into Europe, into 30 centres, and then we're going to have, 10,000 patients by the mid-2022. And at that point, we really will be flying in terms of getting the regulatory inputs in. So it's an iterative process. As with everything else with the clinical trials, you have to start slow, and it builds and it builds and it builds. But with the real-world evidence in using this method rather than randomized controlled trials, we're not limited to a specific cohort at the very beginning. We have statisticians on board, and we're going to be using things like Bayesian stats to drive this forward and to check on an interim basis where we got to, and then check how we actually take the cohorts forward as well. It's complex, but it's not as complex as it used to be. We've got a lot more statistical modeling we can put in, and we may well be using things like artificial intelligence systems, which are really coming into this space, and they can really help us in the coming year. It's very exciting. It's not something that's really been done, certainly not in this area before.
Beautiful. So that's all the questions that I had, and we're just running into time here. But Barney, just wanted to invite you to say any closing words and let people know how they can find you and the album.
Absolutely. As Chand mentioned at the start, there's an opportunity here to invest. We're currently going through a 4 million Canadian dollars raise. And if you head over to albertlabs.com and there'll be an invest now button. If you click that, fill out the form, and a member of our team will be in touch and talk you through the next steps of the process. We'll thank everyone for tuning in today. And these videos are also recorded, so you can rewatch them at any point. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you, Patrick.
Thanks so much, guys.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye. Bye.